Antonio Tarver was once one of the most respected and feared light heavyweights in boxing. A five-time world champion, he became known for his devastating left hand, slick counter-punching, and ability to rise to the occasion. His stunning knockout of Roy Jones Jr. in 2004 remains one of the most shocking moments in boxing history, cementing his place among the greats. But at 56 years old, Harper's life has taken a tragic turn. No longer celebrated as a champion, he has been plagued by financial struggles, legal troubles, and failed comebacks. Suspensions, gambling debts, and child support battles have left him fighting outside the ring, struggling to stay afloat in a sport that has largely turned its back on him. Once a boxing superstar, Tarver now faces the harsh reality of life after fame. This is the heartbreaking downfall of Antonio Tarver, the rise, the scandal, and the struggles that define his life today. Antonio Tarver's journey to boxing greatness began in Orlando, Florida, where he was born on November 21, 1968. Growing up in a tough environment, he found boxing as a way to escape the struggles of his surroundings. From an early age, it was clear that Tarver had something special: natural talent, sharp reflexes, and an unquenchable hunger to be great. Unlike many fighters who turned professional straight out of high school, Tarver dedicated himself to the amateur ranks, developing his skills before making the leap to the pros. His decision paid off in a big way, and he became one of the top amateur boxers in the country. Tarver's breakout moment came in 1996, when he earned a spot on the U.S. Olympic boxing team for the Atlanta Games. 27 years old, he was older than most of his teammates, but his experience and skill set him apart. He competed in the light heavyweight division, where he showcased his sharp counter-punching, elite ring IQ, and impressive power. Tarver went on to win the bronze medal, significant achievement that put him in the spotlight. While he fell short of Olympic gold, his performance made it clear that he was destined for success. In the professional ranks, fighters like Oscar De La Hoya and Sugar Ray Leonard had turned Olympic success into legendary pro careers. Many believe Tarver was next in line. In 1997, at the age of 28, Tarver made his professional debut. His advanced boxing skills, honed during his long amateur career, gave him an edge over most fighters making their debuts. He wasted no time making a statement, racking up knockout victories, and quickly rising through the ranks. Tarver possessed a rare combination of skill and power. His counter-punching was among the sharpest in the light heavyweight division, and his left hand carried knockout power that could change a fight in an instant. His confidence only added to his aura. He fought with the swagger of a champion long before he ever won a title. By the early 2000s, Tarver had established himself as one of the top light heavyweight contenders, captured his first major title in 2003, defeating Montel Griffin to win the WBC and IBF light heavyweight belts. His victory proved that he belonged among the elite, but it wasn't until he faced one of boxing's all-time greats. He truly cemented his place in history. By 2003, Roy Jones Jr. was considered the greatest pound-for-pound fighter in the world. He had dominated multiple weight classes and had just made history by moving up to heavyweight and winning a world title, a feat unheard of for a former middleweight. When he returned to light heavyweight to defend his belts, Tarver was waiting for him. Their first fight in 2003 was a close contest, with Jones narrowly winning a controversial decision. Many believed Tarver had done enough to win, and the demand for a rematch was immediate. Then on May 15, 2004, in one of the most shocking moments in boxing history, Antonio Tarver knocked out Roy Jones Jr. in the second round. It wasn't just a knockout, it was a statement. Jones, who had looked untouchable for years, was suddenly lying on the canvas, unable to beat the count. Tarver had done what no one else could. He had taken down a living legend in his prime. The boxing world was stunned. "You got any excuses tonight?" Ray Tarver famously asked just before the fight began, a line that would go down in boxing history. With that victory, Antonio Tarver became a superstar. He had defeated one of the greatest fighters of all time, and his name was now etched among the legends of the sport after dethroning Jones. Harper solidified his reign by defeating him again in 2005, proving that his first victory was no fluke. He was now a five-time world champion, one of the most dangerous men in boxing, and a fighter who had conquered the very best. His success even extended beyond the ring. Into '06, Harper was cast as Mason the Lion Dixon in Rocky Balboa, starring opposite Sylvester Stallone in the sixth installment of the legendary film series. His role as a heavyweight champion in the movie seemed to parallel his own real-life rise to the top. But what it looked like, Tarver was on his way to becoming one of boxing's biggest stars. Trouble was looming. Bad financial decisions, lack of discipline, and an aging body would soon lead to a downfall that no one saw coming. His reign at the top wouldn't last long, and in just a few short years, the same man who had knocked out Roy Jones Jr. would find himself struggling, both inside and outside the ring. Antonio Tarver's rise was incredible, but his fall would be even more shocking. After Antonio Tarver's shocking knockout victory over Roy Jones Jr. in 2004, it seemed like the sky was the limit. He had cemented his legacy, won multiple world titles, and even stepped into Hollywood, starring as Mason the Lion Dixon in Rocky Balboa 2006. He was living the dream: fame, fortune, and the respect of boxing fans worldwide. But while Tarver enjoyed the spotlight, trouble was brewing behind the scenes. Instead of carefully managing his wealth and planning for life after boxing, he made reckless financial decisions that would come back to haunt him. Lavish spending, poor investments, and a lack of financial discipline slowly began eating away at his fortune. Like many boxers before him, Tarver was making millions, spending even more, and then his dominance in the ring started to fade. In June 2006, Tarver stepped into the ring against another boxing legend, Bernard Hopkins. It was supposed to be a defining moment for Tarver, a fight that would further solidify his place among the greats, but instead, it became a disaster. Tarver showed up out of shape, sluggish, and completely unprepared. He had spent much of his training camp promoting Rocky Balboa, soaking in the Hollywood lifestyle, rather than focusing on the fight. Hopkins, always the ultimate professional, dominated Tarver from start to finish, winning a lopsided decision. The loss wasn't just bad, it was humiliating. Harper had been completely outclassed, and fans began to wonder if his time at the top was already over. Determined to prove that he still had more left in the tank, Tarver attempted multiple comebacks over the next few years, but each time it became more and more apparent he wasn't the same fighter anymore. In 2008, he lost another high-profile fight to Chad Dawson, a younger and fresher fighter who easily outworked him. The defeat was a clear sign that Tarver was no longer among the elite light heavyweights yet. Instead of walking away, while he still had some dignity left, Tarver kept pushing for another shot at glory. He continued fighting well into his 40s, chasing one last big payday that would never come. By the early 2010s, Tarver's name no longer carried the weight it once did. Younger fighters dominated the division, and promoters were no longer interested in putting him in major fights. But instead of accepting reality, Tarver refused to quit. He jumped between different weight classes, trying to stay relevant. He even attempted a move to heavyweight, where he briefly won a minor belt in 2011, but the victory meant little. Tarver was no longer a serious contender. At this point, Harper was fighting for survival, not for championships. The hunger and sharpness that once made him great had disappeared, replaced by desperation and the fear of being forgotten. Worse yet, His financial problems were becoming impossible to ignore. He had spent much of his earnings during his peak years, and with no more big paydays coming in, the reality of his poor financial planning began to hit hard. Like many fighters who struggle to walk away, Tarver convinced himself that he just needed one more big fight to turn things around. He called out top fighters, hoping for a payday that never materialized. But the boxing world had moved on. No promoters were interested in booking a past his prime Tarver in a marquee fight. No networks wanted to air his fights. His star power had faded, and his attempts at reviving his career only damaged his reputation further. The man who once stood at the top of the light heavyweight division, who knocked out Roy Jones Jr. in one of the greatest moments in boxing history, was now just another aging fighter, refusing to let go of the past. Antonio Tarver's decline had begun, and it would only get worse from here. His financial problems, legal troubles, failed drug tests were just around the corner, leading to a fall that no one could have predicted. As Antonio Tarver's boxing career declined, so did his personal life. The once proud champion, who had shocked the world by knocking out Roy Jones Jr., was now making headlines for all the wrong reasons. A combination of failed drug tests, legal troubles, and financial ruin turned him into a forgotten figure in the sport. He once ruled the fall from grace was steep, and by the late 2010s, Harper found himself completely shunned by the boxing world. In 2012, Antonio Tarver was still trying to keep his career alive. At 43 years old, he was far past his prime, but he was determined to prove he could still compete at a high level. That year, he fought Latif KO'd in a cruiserweight bout. That ended in a draw, but soon after the fight, shocking news broke. Harper had tested positive for a banned anabolic steroid. The California State Athletic Commission wasted no time suspending him, and the fight result was changed from a draw to a no contest. This was a devastating blow to his reputation. Fans and boxing analysts began questioning whether his past accomplishments had been legitimate. Had Tarver been using performance-enhancing drugs? Earlier in his career were his victories, including his legendary knockout of Roy Jones Jr. For a fighter who prided himself on his skills and ring IQ, the suspension was a nightmare. One thing Tarver had always clung to, his credibility as a champion, was now in doubt after serving his suspension. He tried to rebuild his reputation, but things only got worse. By 2014, Harper was no longer making the kind of money he once did. His fight purses had dried up, and poor financial decisions had left him in deep trouble. That year, he was arrested in Florida for failing to pay over $200,000 in gambling debts to a casino. Reports revealed that he had taken out massive casino markers, essentially credit lines for high rollers, but failed to pay them back. Tarver, who had once earned millions from his boxing career, was now unable to cover his own gambling losses. The arrest sent shockwaves through the boxing community. How had a fighter of his stature ended up in such financial ruin? This wasn't just a case of an athlete mismanaging his money, it was a complete collapse. The legal issues damaged his public image even further, making it nearly impossible for him to find work in the boxing world. Despite his financial and legal troubles, Tarver refused to walk away from boxing, even in his mid to late 40s. He kept trying to land one last big fight, one last payday that could turn things around. But no major promoters were interested. Networks that once showcased his fights no longer wanted to be associated with him. His failed drug test, gambling debts, and financial struggles had turned him into a liability. Still, Tarver pushed forward. In 2015, at the age of 46, he fought Steve Cunningham in a heavyweight bout. It was his last real chance at making a statement. The fight ended in a draw, and with no major opportunities ahead, it became clear his career was over. The boxing world had officially moved on without him, as if things couldn't get worse. Harper's legal problems continued to pile up. In 2018, he was arrested in Florida for failing to pay child support. Reports indicated that he owed significant amounts in back payments, further adding to his already dire financial situation. For a former world champion, who had once been at the top of his sport, the situation was humiliating. Tarver was now a man, struggling to keep his life together, dealing with lawsuits, financial obligations, and the harsh reality that his days as a top boxer were long gone by the late 2010s. Antonio Tarver had been completely exiled from the boxing industry. Unlike other former champions, who found success as trainers, analysts, or promoters, Tarver had no such opportunities. The networks and promoters that once celebrated him no longer wanted anything to do with him, even as younger fighters received second chances after legal troubles or failed drug tests. Tarver remained blacklisted. His past mistakes combined with his financial troubles made him an afterthought in the sport he had once dominated. Once a world champion and a boxing icon, Tarver was now a forgotten figure struggling, desperate, and unable to find a way back. At 56 years old, Antonio Tarver is a shadow of the man who once ruled the light heavyweight division. Once a world champion with millions in earnings, he is now struggling to stay financially afloat. His past legal troubles, failed business ventures, and reckless financial decisions have left him with little to show for his once glorious career. Unlike other retired champions who smoothly transitioned into coaching, commentary, or promotional roles, Tarver has largely been pushed out of the sport. He once dominated for years. He tried to land a permanent position as a boxing analyst, believing that his deep knowledge of the sport and natural charisma could make him a valuable addition to the commentary world. He had brief stints on networks like Showtime, but none of them lasted. Whether it was due to his tarnished reputation or network politics, Harper was never able to secure a long-term spot in broadcasting. Without a steady income, he now relies on small-time sponsorships, boxing-related appearances, and occasional training gigs just to survive. It's a far cry from the millions he once earned. Boxing is a sport that leaves its mark on a fighter's body, and Tarver is no exception. Years of training camps, brutal fights, and constant punishment in the ring have left him dealing with long-term physical issues. Like many retired fighters, Harper experiences chronic pain from years of wear and tear. Speed, reflexes, and athleticism that once made him a champion are now long gone, replaced by the effects of aging and accumulated injuries beyond the physical toll. The psychological effects of his downfall weigh heavily on him. He once stood on top of the boxing world, headlining major pay-per-views and earning the respect of fans worldwide. Now he's barely mentioned in discussions about the greatest light heavyweights of all time. He watches as fighters he once defeated have moved on to successful post-boxing careers. Roy Jones Jr. became a respected analyst and trainer. Bernard Hopkins became a successful promoter. Even Chad Dawson, whom Tarver fought twice, has faded into retirement with more stability than Tarver has. The thought of being forgotten is something that haunts him. Despite all the setbacks, Tarver still holds on to the idea of one last comeback. Even in his mid-50s, he continues to train, hoping for an opportunity to step into the ring again. But at this point, the reality is clear. His fighting days are long over. No major boxing organization will license him, and no serious promoter will put him in a fight. His body is no longer capable of competing at the elite level, and any return to the ring would be dangerous. Still, Tarver refuses to fully walk away. Sport at once made him a star, has also left him without an identity outside of it. It's the same tragic cycle that has consumed so many former champions. They chase one last payday, one last chance at glory, not realizing that the sport court has already moved on without them looking back. Harper's life is filled with what ifs. What if he had made better financial decisions? What if he had focused on a career in commentary or coaching instead of chasing failed comebacks? What if he had retired at the right time instead of letting his reputation fall apart? Antonio Tarver had all the talent and charisma to remain a respected figure in boxing after retirement. Instead, he is now a forgotten champion, a man whose story serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of mismanaging fame, name, money, and opportunities. And at 56 years old with his prime long behind him, he is left wondering how it all went so wrong. Antonio Tarver's story is a heartbreaking mix of talent, triumph, and tragedy. He reached the pinnacle of boxing, shocking the world by knocking out Roy Jones Jr. and cementing himself as a five-time world champion. Outside the ring, bad financial decisions, legal troubles, and failed comebacks led to his downfall. At 56 years old, Tarver is a forgotten figure in the sport he once ruled, while other boxing legends have successfully transitioned into commentary, training, or for promotions. Tarver struggles just to stay financially stable. His reputation, once built on skill and dominance, is now overshadowed by controversies, suspensions, and poor life choices. Tarver's story is a harsh lesson about the dangers of mismanaging wealth, staying in the fight game too long, and failing to secure a future beyond boxing. He had all the talent in the world, but outside the ring he made the wrong moves. What do you think? Should Antonio Tarver be remembered as a boxing legend, or does his downfall define his legacy? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like and subscribe. For more boxing stories, thanks for watching.